This is the first of 4 webinars in this series, Transitioning to a More Accessible Tomorrow. During today's webinar, participants will be muted. You can use the chat box, which is located at the bottom of your Zoom window, to ask questions, both to the speakers and to the hosts. If you have any issues, technical issues connecting, or questions on the Zoom app, also please use the chat box to ask those. We will do our very best to answer as many questions as possible, either through the chat or verbally by our speakers. Closed captioning is being provided for today's webinar. If you wish to view the closed captioning, please expand the CC button in the ribbon, again at the bottom of your Zoom window, and select Show Subtitles. You can also view a complete transcript in a separate window by choosing View Full Transcript from the same menu. An ASL interpreter is also being provided for this webinar. Actually, we have 2 interpreters who should be visible to you on your screen, and they will be swapping off about every 15 minutes. If you have any questions about the functionality of the Zoom meeting platform, again, you can provide a question in the chat box, or you can visit the Zoom website shown currently on the screen. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted by FHWA at a later date. By attending or speaking in the virtual webinar being held under FHWA's ADA Peer Exchange, you consent to be audio recorded by FHWA and its agents. Further, by attending or speaking in the virtual meeting, you also authorize FHWA to publish, reproduce, exhibit, transmit, digitize, distribute, and otherwise use for educational, promotional, or any other purposes recordings of or by you collectively, including the materials, in any format whatsoever, now or hereinafter, created by FHWA without further notice or consent. It is understood that all of our materials and all audio tapes and electronic and digital copies of the materials are the sole property of FHWA. By attending or speaking in the virtual meeting, you release FHWA and its agents from any liability arising out of use of the materials. As I mentioned, this is the first of 4 webinars. We have 3 additional upcoming webinars after today. The role of MPOs in transition plan implementation will be held on June 30th. The local public agency experiences in transition plan implementation will be held on July 14th. And then finally, disability advisory groups involvement in transition plan implementation will be held on July 21st. All webinars will be from until 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. And you can register at we will include the registration links in the chat a little later on at the end of today's webinar. It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Ms. Betsy Morales from the FHWA Office of Civil Rights. Betsy, take it away.
Thank you, Brad. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Federal Highway ADA Virtual Peer Exchange on ADA Transition Plan Implementation for local public agencies. As Brad stated, my name is Betsy Morales, ADA Program Analyst from the Federal Highway Office of Civil Rights. I will be facilitating today's session. This is our first webinar in a series of 4. This webinar series will focus on noteworthy practices of various stakeholders in supportive efforts of LPAs to implement their transition plans and comply with ADA requirements. Today's session will focus on how state DOTs can support LPAs in implementing their ADA transition plans. Today, you will hear from Margaret Mahler from the Tennessee Department of Transportation and Lyris Lateau and Zach Wiener from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. To get us started, let's have a poll question. Okay, which is, what type of agency do you represent? Please select one. Can you guys see the poll? Brad, can they see the poll?
I'm not seeing the poll.
Okay. It says polling is closed.
Hold on.
Okay, there it goes. I apologize, everyone. Now if you can put in your, please select one. I'll give everyone a few seconds. Okay, we have about close to 80% who voted. So I'm going to end polling. All right. Okay, so the majority are from local governments and state DOTs. Well, great, welcome everyone. We look forward to this discussion today. Now, to start us out, we are honored to have Federal Highway Administration of Civil Rights, Irene Rico. Irene Rico, in this capacity, leads a professional staff in providing civil rights policy, programmatic and strategic guidance to federal highway program offices, division offices, other federal agencies, state departments of transportation, and private sector organizations. She also guides the development of implementation of federal highway civil rights strategic plan. Prior to this assignment, she served as a division administrator in Virginia, where she oversaw the strategic management and delivery of the $900 million federal aid program. She has also held other key positions, including special assistant to the executive director. Ms. Rico received a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering from the University of Texas at El Paso and obtained a Master of Science degree in civil engineering from the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. Please welcome Irene Rico.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you very much to the committee that put together the peer exchange for 2021. As all of you that are joining us today, you have been working hard in implementation of the Americans with Disability Act as it was passed into law in 1990. And the purpose of the act is to ensure that people with disabilities have equality in all aspects of public life. Since the passage of this very important act, the legislation has helped increase access to people with disabilities in transportation, to have access to employment, access to housing, public services, education, public accommodations, communication, and recreation, and so much more. State and local agencies like yourselves have made a great stride in making the transportation system in our country more accessible to all the citizens that we serve. FHWA, we are so proud to be part of this event today, and we are very thankful for you to contribute on your commendable practices, your lessons learned with each other, so that we can together continue to move the needle in the accessibility and removing barriers in our country. As Betsy mentioned, we have put together a webinar series of 4. Today is our first series, and I am so much looking forward to hearing from the speakers today. Our focus continues to be, how are we implementing ADA transition plans around the country? We started this journey last year, as many of you have joined us, and our focus then was on state DOT's implementation. This year, we want to put the spotlight in a positive manner to the local public agencies. How are you doing in this area? What can you share with each other? And how can we together continue to advance the implementation of removing barriers for those with disabilities? This webinar series will highlight noteworthy practices, like I said, of various stakeholders to support the efforts of LPAs in the implementation of the transition plans. With that, I will turn it over to Betsy Morales to continue to facilitate the session. And I want to say thank you again to the speakers today for dedicating time to the cause of removing barriers and also to share your experience and your practices with all of us attending today. Thank you. Betsy?
Thank you, Irene. That was a great start to today's session. To start us out, we have our first panelist, Margaret Mahler. Over 26 years ago, Margaret joined the Tennessee Department of Transportation, originally handling ADA Title I and II for the department. Later, she focused solely on Title II, reviewing standards, facilities, and projects. Margaret was part of the first group of people to receive her ADA coordination certification from the University of Missouri and the Great Lakes ADA Center. She has sat on a number of boards, including the Board of Directors for the Center for Independent Living of Tennessee and the Advisory Committee for Congressman Jim Cooper. She has consulted with many Tennessee state agencies about accessibility and accommodations. Margaret has a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Memphis and a Master's of Theological Studies from Mind Red College and Seminary. Please welcome Margaret Mahler. While Margaret's getting her slides up, we'll do one more poll question. Okay. Okay. Can everyone see the poll? Brad, can they see it? I think so. Okay, how does your agency use the ADA transition plan? Select all that apply. I'll give everyone a few seconds. Okay, I see Margaret has her slides up. I'm gonna end polling. Okay. So the majority use it for project development and design and the maintenance work planning. Great, we have a good variety. Thank you so much. Margaret, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, good afternoon. I hope you all can hear me and see the slides. I am Margaret Mahler from Tennessee Department of Transportation. Tennessee has been working on updating their transportation transition plan, but also working with our subrecipients to ensure that they have been able to start at least on their plan. I don't want to be preaching to the choir here as far as why the transition plan is necessary and why accessibility is, other than to say that a large proportion of the population either is or will be in the future in need of some of this accessibility. One of the other things, since we do have a lot of cities joining us today, is 504. 504 went way back to 73, and it talked about non-discrimination if you receive federal funds. The reason I bring that up is you will be surprised when you go about your work how many people will still ask you about federal funding, and we don't have federal funding, so we don't have to comply. And that's a big misunderstanding. We talk about the original law, and this will all be in the notes that you can acquire. We had more or less two sets of standards, those that are vertical and those that are in the right of way, so buildings or streets. Both the ADA and 504 do talk about your programs, your services, and your activities. It's not really as much an engineering concept as it is a civil rights. The DOJ has some different definitions than you may be familiar with if you are with a state DOT or a city DOT. They define sidewalks as part of a program, and that's a little different from us. The same with Curb Ramp is a program very much like we found some years ago that DOTs will call resurfacing maintenance, but it is the courts that say, no, 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 it's an improvement, and improvements have to comply with ADA. And it's best to understand that it's the courts that are writing the rules for ADA here. So you want to look at areas where you interact with the public, also with your employees, but that's really a different title and something different than we're looking at. It's really a civil rights. This is all civil rights, but you violate someone's civil rights by possibly your design or your engineering practices. You're not putting up a sign that says nobody can come in a building, but you're saying the same thing when you put a flight of stairs in the front. That says only a certain portion of the population or a different group of the population can come in the building and a different group cannot come in the building. And so that's really kind of the background and what you need to be looking at. Transition plans, if you're a state DOT, we've talked about these for a long time. City and municipalities. I sum a transportation plan up as what do you have, what's not right, and how are you going to fix it? And in Tennessee, we looked at everything that goes into a formal transportation plan is kind of spelled out by the Department of Justice. Federal Highway Administration currently is looking at what we're going to do in the right-of-way. We're looking more at the roads and streets and those things that Federal Highway Administration says grace over. This is kind of a screen that spells out all the different elements that go into a transition plan. And I have included the chapter and verse for each one of these that we'll go over, because at some point, and probably more than you would like, you're going to be asked by people to say, where in the law does it say I have to do X, Y, or Z? And this is actually part of we developed a brochure that we could hand out, and I'll make sure that Betsy has that you can rearrange and make your own so that people understand what it is that you're actually looking for. Your ADA coordinator. It should not be somebody that missed a meeting and so wasn't there to object to being designated as your ADA coordinator. It is somebody that needs training, extensive training. The more you get, the better it is. And somebody needs to be high enough in your organization, high enough in your city to be able to get things done. In a lot of situations when we were helping cities and counties, it fell to the city manager, and then they assign people under them to look at different elements of a transition plan. The one thing that makes everyone nervous, but actually was very pleasant in Tennessee, was you have to ask the end user. You need to let the public know what your city or your agency is doing for accessibility. You want to ask them for their input. You want to reach out. Don't just put a notice, on the bottom of a page somewhere. Reach out and contact groups. I always say start with your Center for Independent Living, and they can give you and help you with other organizations that work with people with disabilities that serve the community. And we were able to get many of them to put a questionnaire or a notice that Tennessee Department of Transportation was working on this on their own website. We also put the information on our website. And one of the things you got to work on, and it's getting much, much better, is to make sure that your website is ADA compliant. Grievance procedure. I'm not fond of that term. It sounds kind of dark, but it's a requirement. It should be on your web page. You should be able to find it quickly. And it should contain the actual name and phone number of the ADA coordinator, not just a title, but the person's name. You want someone that's calling with a concern, an issue, or a grievance to feel comfortable talking to that person, that one person that then filters it out into your agency to see what kind of work, what kind of changes that can be made. Make sure that's also posted on your webpage. That's important. Really from your home page, you want to be able to click on something that says ADA or accessibility and be able to find you quickly. ADA is kind of under its own title, maybe on your web page, as opposed to hidden kind of under HR or engineering. A citizen is not going to know that in HR you have an ADA coordinator, or under maintenance, your ADA coordinator is there because they work with curb cuts. So they may work for HR, they may work for engineering, but you should be able to find it very quickly. And I was taught very long ago, a wonderful attorney, David Fram, he said, everything in ADA should start with the conversation, how can I help you? And if you start, how can I help you? And that we're going to try to catch up for what we haven't done over 30 years, things will go a lot easier. Design standards. Look at your specs. Look at your standards. Is your city or is your state DOT using PROAG as a standard? PROAG, the right-of-way standards, have not been adopted by the Department of Justice. They're best practices for Federal Highway Administration, but your state DOT, your city can adopt them as a standard. And that really helps when you can point to a book and it says, this is the cross slope. This is what you need to do. And your other policies will need to be written to address that also. I helped a city that they let the driveways in front of homes, in front of garage doors, be so short that if you actually parked in your own driveway, you were blocking the sidewalk. So you're fighting against each other. So either you need to look at your codes and make sure the driveway is long enough for a vehicle, or possibly look, are the police actually writing tickets for people blocking a sidewalk? In a vehicle, you can drive around something, but if you're trying to use a sidewalk and there's a vehicle blocking it, you've run into a dead end, and that's not what we're looking to do. So really, ADA kind of is sprinkled in everything that your agency does. At TDOT, the chief engineer says, ADA is simply how we do business. And I like that a lot. Self-evaluation. Again, it's looking at your programs and your facilities. You need to identify things that are not accessible. One of the things I get a lot of phone calls about, and fortunately are not my concerns, is people cannot get in to get a driver's license. If you're a municipality, can someone get in to pay for a utility bill? Can I get into your building to request a driveway permit? These are not always seen as part of a transition plan, but it really is. It's more than just a curb cut. And so this all goes into your self-evaluation, again, of what do we have? What are we going to do to make those things that are not compliant? And the big one, when are we going to do it? Again, you want to make sure that the public knows that this is what you're doing, because if you're sitting in an office and you're going to decide, well, we're going to do all the curb ramps down Main, but you've got 3 requests, so somebody can actually get to work, that on South 3rd, they need some curb ramps. Those are how you start looking at your self-evaluation and putting it in order of who's going to fix what this year and next year and down the line. Scheduling and budgets. Ooh, that's the ugly one, the budget. Because really ADA is affecting everybody's budget. Often making ADA upgrades is not an independent budget. It's great if it is, but it needs to be worked into your resurfacing program. It needs to be written into your web designer. It needs to be written into your communications office. So there's a lot of things outside of just brick and mortar or concrete that needs to be looked at here. Once you get all of those things, those items that need to be repaired together, that's when you're going to be able to put together your true transition plan of what's wrong and what's the date we're going to fix it. What day are we going to fix it on? Now, those are not in concrete. If something happens, you can change some of your calendar. If you were planning on fixing something in front of the library this year, but a tornado has taken out City Hall, well, you can adjust where your budget's going to go, but you're going to ensure that the new City Hall is fully compliant. So it needs to be visited and visited often. And if I was going to say what was the one thing TDOT did, and I think we did right, the one thing I would recommend to everybody is training. Lots of training, great training, not just good training, great training. The more people who understand what you're doing, and more importantly, why you're doing it, the easier this process goes. Understanding of some of the funding requirements will come out of training. If you say, I need $3 million to do this, and someone has not a clue what goes into building a compliant curb ramp or updating software for your web page, that money may sound outrageous when it's really probably a drop in the bucket. You want to bring all your partners together in training. We did 8 trainings across the state for what it takes to put together a transition plan. And then we've done probably the same in the right-of-way standards. And we invited the disability community. We had our employees in that room. We had county employees in the room. We had consultants in the room. You always want to make sure your MPOs and your RPOs are invited so that everybody sees that we're all on the same page and we all have the very same goal. We invited cities and counties. We invited state representatives. I can only remember one state representative that took the day to come for the training, but absolutely everybody was invited so that they knew what we were doing, because they will get a phone call about it. Paying for this, boy, that was the question we got an awful lot. But it's a planning document. How do you pay for any other planning document? TDOT allowed a number of folks to use TAP funding for developing plans. STBG funds may have been used for the development of these transition plans. We also look at, again, our stewardship of all the funding that we have to look at these third party or subrecipients. Everybody calls them something different, but we weight the grants and look at who is going to be doing work that will help accessibility in that particular community. A lot of streetscapes we've all been through, applied for, but we wanted to make sure when they presented that grant, we were seeing accessibility compliance or ADA compliance had to be written throughout their the grant proposal, because that is where we wanted to put our money. That's where we wanted to see projects go toward. So really, all of your state funding grants at this point, 30 years later, should be starting with accessibility. And so that was something that helped us along the way. Again, we did lots of training online. We did free training for folks. We hired people to come in to do training. We did in-person training. We did a great program. Federal Highway Administration, they have a program written where we're putting designers and engineers into wheelchairs or blindfolding them so that they can understand how important that cross slope or something that seems very small to you is to someone else. We don't all use this the same way. We hired trainers and we used in-house trainers. Now, I will tell you, make sure that you're looking to hire someone that has done this before, because you really do not want to spend your time training your trainers or training your consultants. You want people that have done this. Ask to see or get recommendations that they've done it before. The same as if you're going to do this program, you want to make sure that if you're hiring a firm to help you, they have done this not once, but many times. So that's really important. You're still going to have a big team inside. This is not a one-man operation. You're going to have a big team even if you hire a firm, because they're not going to know the little details of where things go and how you've done things for the last 10 years. again, you really want to make sure they've done this before. You've got your inventory. Resurfacing requires ramps. So asphalt lasts 7 to 10 years, at least in our climate. And so in 10 years, every ramp should be finished. And we started this quite some time ago. Again, citizen input is always good. And it's a good time to look at your driveway permit. Close your eyes and try to get across the driveway of your local gas station. Because so many of them in Tennessee are just big open frontage. There's no curb to help you get through. Your plan, write it out, put it out there for people to see. Your webpage is the absolutely easiest and cheapest way to put those things out there. Ask for more input. The input's never gone. You're always asking for input. Monitor the work and visit your plan twice a year, quarterly, whatever it is. Get your team together and visit. Are we working on our plan? Get help. The National ADA Network, it's wonderful. Great Lakes. And if you're going to be an ADA coordinator, you need to go and be part of the National ADA Symposium. This year it's in Phoenix in July. You can tell they're getting state rates if you're willing to go to Phoenix in July, but they are the absolute best to help you in this. So I would contact them. That's really what I've got to share with you today. And if there's any questions, I'd love to address them.
Thank you, Margaret. That was great. We do have a question for you. What will happen if an LPA doesn't have a plan?
Well, if they're applying for a grant, we always have more grants than we have money. There's now don't know. I guess that's the big question I would ask Federal Highway Administration is what's going to happen. But for us right now, you're not competitive if you haven't started your plan.
Okay. So one more question for you. How do you find qualified consultants and instructors?
You need to ask, check with other cities, go to. How I found everybody was at the ADA Symposium. It's in a different part of the state, different parts of the year, but ask to see what someone has done. As a state DOT, I can't tell you who's the best. If you contacted us, we could tell you who we used. And I sure looked at a lot of people, and I've done this for a lot of years. But there are a lot of nationally recognized people out there doing this kind of work, and they are wonderful to be with.
Great. Thank you, Margaret, so much. That was a great presentation. Now we're going to hear from Zachary Wiener and Lyris Lateau. If they can start pulling up their slides. Now let's read their bios. Zachary Wiener has worked for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for 12 years and currently serves as the MassDOT State Accessibility Engineer in the Highway Design section. In his role, he reviews construction plans for ADA compliance. He also updates the pedestrian curve ramp inventory and the ADA transition plan and administers courses for cities and towns to create their ADA transition plans. Zach holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from McGill University in Montreal. Lyris Lateau is a professional civil engineer with more than 25 years of experience, including 13 years with Massachusetts Department of Transportation. She is the Assistant State Highway Design Engineer for Massachusetts DOT. In this role, she oversees and guides the highway design section in meeting its project delivery goals and its review and oversight role on highway design issues on all roadway maintenance program, on all roadway projects in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This oversight includes the roadway maintenance program, a $165 million per year program, and the ADA retrofits program, a $10 million per year program. Lyris holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Penn State University and a Master of Civil Engineering degree from Norwich University. Please welcome Zach and Lyris.
Thank you very much. I believe I am now sharing my video and everybody can hear me. Thanks a lot. I'm Zachary Wiener. I'm from Mass DOT, and I'm here today to talk to you about our transition plan and our experience with our transition plan while helping cities and towns and municipalities also implement their own plans. So what have we been doing to bring our transition plans to municipalities? Well, we kind of have a 3-phase process, right? Sharing our best practices through trainings and online tools, engagement, which includes learning, implementation, and public outreach, and executing, which comes down to, getting it out there with the funding, how we're going to spend it, and what policies and initiatives we can pull together to encourage the transition plan to not just be a document, but to be a way that you are presenting your program. So we all know what a transition plan is, but what can we do that can encourage cities and towns to buy in? How can we share our efforts to pivot from the way things have always been done to include accessibility for all users? So let's talk about what MassDOT has been doing. We've been trying our best to lead by example, learning by doing. We know that, I guess we've been given 30 years to work through to get here to where we are. And all of us as a country, have been lagging behind. And we've been getting to that place where we can have these transition plans to show that we are making that effort to move forward and to implement what has been put forth by the things that were presented before, 504 and ADA. So other than that, we've also been doing training through Bay State Roads and University of Massachusetts, UMass, and also presentations that we've been doing with coordination through independent living centers around the state. I think this won't go away. It's fine. Sharing best practices, training, and online tools. So these are the different things that we can do in order to get in contact with both municipalities and the public. So for Municipal ADA Compliance Initiative, we talk about how we're going to do our training. Well, how does that build? Well, step one really that we did was we held ADA transition plan training for municipalities. Multiple towns around the state we traveled to, along with UMass Transportation Center and Bay State Roads organizing to help train in different regions. Yearly, typically we've been doing 3 different trainings a year, and we've been getting different cities and towns to come in and get that training. To follow up through that, MassDOT has provided trainings at Metropolitan Planning Organization meetings, independent living centers, and even at our own MassDOT district offices, trying to get the word out there of what can be done, what is getting done, and how we can do better. And then also 3, we've piloted a strategy for municipal curb ramp data collection. We have our own, and so what we're trying to do is help the municipalities do their own curb ramp inventories, working towards that goal of having a municipal partner work with the tool on their own self-evaluation. And 4 is we've updated our MassDOT policies, practices, and strategies. We have a healthy transportation policy, we have a new engineering directive, and we have several other engineering directives that have been around for a little bit longer to help promote the adoption and support of municipal compliance. So what is our MassDOT pedestrian transportation plan? So this is sort of an overarching document that helps with our transition plan. So we have a federal highway approved transition plan, and it's a living document that we're updating every 2 years. And so, you know, this past year and a half being a pandemic, it's almost time for us to get back at it and resubmit our new updated transition plans with new numbers, new strategies, new lessons learned. We submitted right in at the middle of I don't even know what time is anymore, but it was in 2020. Other efforts, including roadway reconstruction and other project-related constructions, have increased the total number of ramps that we've built. And our ped and bike specific projects have focused on connectivity and compliance needs at the district level. And so we see that, you know, our approach is our transition plan. And through just our normal practices that we're picking up this information as well. So the more the data that we can pull in and get together, the more that we can show that our progress is broad spreading, is wide spreading. So how does this translate? Well, it's a long range effort, right? Our ramp remediation project is a 15-year program. Starting in 2017 and going to 2032, we've identified and prioritized all of the ramps within our state in order to figure out what's deficient, what's currently programmed to be reconstructed, what has been reconstructed, and what is compliant. So in a pilot effort, you know, to go from the ramps into longitudinal assets, sidewalks, et cetera, pilot effort is being developed with the UMass Amherst School of Engineering that will rely on a LiDAR technology to conduct the sidewalk assessment and do a similar breakdown of how we conducted the same assessment with our curb ramps. And Complete Streets and ADA curb ramp retrofit projects have been bid and are currently being built and designed simultaneously. We have some ADA curb ramp retrofits and complete street projects that are out in construction right now, some that are in design, but all that are working towards a more accessible Massachusetts. We also have public-facing mapping. So Massachusetts GeoDot is used to view, create, and share this data in a collaborative manner. The platform is tasked with providing public access, providing the public access to the most up-to-date transportation-related GIS data in various forms to allow the most usability across a wide variety of platforms. So within GeoDot, there's many different categories, and our asset management, you know, our assets are located in here, and anyone can go and view the maps. And let's talk about one of them right now, our pedestrian curb ramp editor. So the editor is internally facing, but the viewer is externally facing. So what we can do is we can go in and update our inventory. The inventory is updated manually, starting with interdepartmental communication, which is key, right? Because construction, maintenance, permits, all of them have projects that are updating ramps. And if we're working together as a DOT, we know that we can be able to track this information. One of the biggest issues that we've had historically is we'll go out and a ramp will get built, and then we find out that 2 years later, there's actually a program project that's going to be in the exact same location. And we've not wasted our efforts, but we've duplicated our efforts unnecessarily. And so the efficiency and being able to get accessibility out there faster is really important, and this helps implement that. The GeoDot website contains the pedestrian curb ramp editor application. So depending on if you're public facing or from within MassDOT, there's different access permissions, obviously. And so this breaks it down for if it's compliant, a note section for why it would be deficient, its location, and its status of deficient, planned reconstruction, and other categories, including a unique asset ID. The data GeoDot contains tracks pedestrian curb ramps throughout the whole state if they are DOT owned, including each ramp's unique identification number and current status. So that's sort of what I had just gone over. Another map that we have is a potential for walkable trips. So This is part of the implementation of pedestrian and bicyclist study. And what this shows is it's a heat map, a longitudinal map of where we expect to see more activity, right? So prioritization is really the name of the game, right? If we're spending our money, we want to be making sure that we are helping as many people get to their destinations as possible. So these are potential for walkable trips that we can use this mapping tool to have a visual representation of walking potential on MassDOT-owned roads, and know that our projects, you know, should be more robust and in these locations, or even more focused in these locations. And all projects can reference back to these transition plan factors. And further, and something that we don't always remember, is that potential for everyday biking is also an accessibility issue. Not everybody that is riding a bike has the same physical abilities. And so it's still a need for accessibility. And this is also part of what we have, is mapping for potential for everyday biking. The need, accessibility, population density, destination locations, social equity, all of these things are factored in to the potential and to the rating system within this. It's built from a system that is also built from that transition plan. And one of the key things that we like to focus on is connectivity, getting people from destination to destination and making sure that everybody is able to do that to the same ability. So how about our engagement? How do we learn, implement, and reach out to the public? Well, one of our biggest partners is the independent living centers. Highly recommended to make initial contact to help develop that plan when you're creating your transition plan, because nobody knows the communities better than the independent living centers existing there. They know the people that need it, how that all breaks down to make their community the accessible community that it deserves to be. And so as you work together and present with them and build a relationship with them, they become a resource for us, MassDOT, to learn and grow ourselves, right? We're always learning. And this is another way for us to learn as we're implementing. Continued involvement to work together to educate the municipalities. We use the ILCs and they use us to help train people within their community. And we build that relationship to provide feedback. I don't know why the picture is not here, but we have a program called Map It. And what Map It does is it's our project initiation tool from the municipalities. And what is bugging me that the picture isn't there, but that's all right. What it does is it allows the municipalities to come in and propose their projects, their projects that they want funded directly on a map that can be submitted, and talk about their outline to where their projects are, show what the limits are. But also, it's already in a mapping system. So they can take it and talk about all of the proponents of the social equity scores, the accessibility scores, the types of people that are living in the area. All of those things can be broken down for the project score. So you know ahead of time as you're applying for your project, if your project is going to be accepted, if your project is going to rank high, at least you hope, that taking all of these factors in is going to help you with a successful project. Apparently it's on the next slide somehow. These are sort of the factors that we've taken down, right? When we were putting together our curb ramp inventory, we broke down what those weighted averages should be, because not everything is created equal. It's more important for us to be upgrading ramps in areas where persons with disabilities are, so that we can make sure that they get what they need, right? If there are safety concerns, if it's a high crash area, we want to make sure that we are providing that access, accessible access to all of our users there. But the constraints, the right of way, while they may be more difficult to build there, that shouldn't be how we rank our system. Eventually we will get to the issues of right of way, but it's not going to deter us from programming in that area. When we initially put out our various locations ADA contracts, we knew that we had to look at our right-of-way constraints because we had a short time frame. So we did use that and pull out a prioritized list that could get out there quickly, but it still worked from the initial numbers and working through corridors to upgrade ramps. And then when we had a little more time on the second contract, that factor became less of an issue. So how are we doing? Well, we can look at this and see the total ramps that we've identified, how many are deficient, and how many we've reconstructed so far. And we break it down. We have 6 districts in Massachusetts. And so we can see how the progress, not all districts are created equal, but we can see that the progress and the percentage that we've been improving has been very successful. And we want to talk about public participation. So with public participation, we want to provide the public opportunity to discuss and examine the draft plan, the budget analysis protections, the methodology, alteration schedules, plan updates, and reporting. We want to bring the community together as often as we can, and we want to document that, right? We want to make sure that the outreach and the consultation is being represented by the people that it's going to affect. We want to document all of that specifically and explicitly. And we want to respond to those comments. And we want to make those plans accessible. Online, large print, screen reader, have your website up, ready, running, and accessible. So what was our public engagement strategy? Going back to leading by example, well, we had a series of 4 meetings during the fall of 2019. Those presentations were posted for public access, and we were promoting our public-facing tracking tools. All of these things work together to make sure that people know what's happening. If they know what's happening, they expect it. So it's also a level of being responsible for what you say you're going to do. It's we get out there, we're teaching those courses to the municipalities, but it's also a checks and balance system. If you're telling people that you are going to be doing this, well, it's best for them to hold you accountable as well. And it works for a motivation to make sure that we're doing what we should be doing all the time. At this moment, I'm going to turn it over to Lyris to complete the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Zach. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to talk about how we've executed or how we are continuously executing our transition plan. And really for execution, we're going to look into our funding, spending, and policy initiative. So those are the 3 areas that really drove our execution. Okay, can we go to the next slide? So first of all, we know that in order to have a multi-year plan, we have different components. And execution includes a multi-year plan with different components, which are basically a monitoring plan, a budget, a method, but really the pillar would be a budget and an alteration schedule. So our schedule basically is the list of prioritization plan that Zach talked about earlier. Each of the District of Massachusetts has a detailed prioritization plan of ramps that needs to be replaced within our own state right-of-way. And we keep to that schedule every year that we have ramps or projects that are being advertised. We keep to that schedule and we update it continuously. And we know, it's a multi-year plan. Our transition plan, I think our sunset date was 2032. And we're continuously getting feedback from the public, reporting in the GIS layer, GeoDot, what ramps and have been updated and so forth, so that we can continue. Because as we know, an ADA transition plan is really a living document that's continuously being updated, taking into consideration, taking accountability and developing a plan, building ramps, creating accessible areas continuously. Okay, we can go to the next one. So, and a budget is one of the pillars, like I said before. And when creating a transition plan, it's you're not limited to funds uniquely just for ramps into a single program. So what we've done in Massachusetts, we've used different programs that are available to us, whether they're federal funds or whether they're state funds, in order to execute our projects in our ADA accessibility plan. And you know, and as cities and towns or around the country, as you're developing your plan, you can, you know that it's not just going to be one single plan that's going to fund it. You can determine, you know, comparative analysis, you know, what different funding sources that you have available for you. You can also decide on the maximum feasible amount, okay, that can be dedicated year to year without having an undue financial burden to the cities and towns and so forth. And then you can change your project, your budget, as will affect your iteration schedule, always wanting to, you know, keep a pulse on your budget, see what's being developed and how you can comply, how you can develop your projects. Okay, so for Massachusetts, I'll go to the next slide. What we've done, we've executed our program using different funding sources. I think I can use the next slide, Zach. And thank you. So multiple funding sources that we've used in order to develop our plan, to execute our plan, were first the Safe Route to School, which is a federal program, but it's state applied. It has an application process. And so we've used a lot of Safe Route to School funding. It's basically a $2 million fund per project within 2 miles of the school, where you can introduce all your ramps, all your sidewalks, all your bicycle facilities toward the school. So those are very useful. So you can we've used our Safe Route to School, making sure that the roads are, the school is accessible, that we have pedestrian and bicycle accommodations to the school. We've also used what's called the Massachusetts Office of Disability Grant Program. This is an MOD grant program, is a grant of $250,000 in a competitive basis for the cities and towns of the state, which, you know, for a project that can show and demonstrate a real tangible positive impact to person with disability. If they have a great program that they can introduce to their cities and towns, there's an application process and cities and towns are able to apply and get that kind of funding. Then we have the Complete Streets funding program in Massachusetts that we've had. We have at least 2/3 of our cities and towns, of 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, that have, you know, applied or that are part of our Complete Streets funding program. And that gives them at least $50,000 for planning assistance, and also up to $400,000 for constructions of ADA ramps, crossings, accessibility within their cities and towns. So that's another source that's available for them. Then we have the federal HSIP improvement program. Usually we have intersection improvement programs in Massachusetts. And those projects are usually selected through either the MPOs or anyway. So we have that facility to be able to prepare our projects. And then we have the standard SIP project initiation. We're committed in Massachusetts to create projects for our ADA retrofits projects. We have about, I think, $10 million per year for those. So we make sure that each district in Massachusetts has, you know, projects created. We have consultants that are on board, and our ADA coordinator makes sure that those projects go down through the prioritization list of our ADA curb ramps in order to be built and really fulfill our commitment to make our statewide overlay ramps accessible. Okay, thank you. I can go to the next slide. And then now that we had our budget, different funding sources, in Massachusetts, we also rolled out a new engineering directive, E20001, that was implemented in January 2020. And this engineering directive really puts in the forefront pedestrian accessibility. We want our roads, it's basically our controlling criteria and design justification process for MassDOT's highway division process. And basically our first 14 controlling criteria start with 1, pedestrian facilities. Then we have bicycle facilities, then transit, then ramp lengths, then design speed. So we're really being holistic in our design approach, even in our engineering directives, where we're putting pedestrian facilities up front, bicycle facilities, then transit provisions and so forth, and incorporating them into our design process. And then we have our justification workbook where we're asking the designers to justify why you don't have pedestrians or bicycle facilities within their own projects. So we really want to keep the designers and accountable to what it is that needs to be provided within our policies. Okay, you can go to the next one. So some example of municipalities leading the ways in Massachusetts in terms of applying their transition plan. I can go to the next one, Zach. First one is the city of Somerville, for example. Here they have the curb ramp inventory. That is accessible online. This is a map that's paired with the data to visualize. So one way that municipalities are able to show is basically where are the missing ramps located, what are the ramps that have been built, and so forth. And these maps are also paired with an Excel sheet that shows exactly the location of what ramp is missing at which corner of the streets and which one has been rebuilt. So this is, somebody that has done the way. And then the next one, the next town is in Concord, Massachusetts, where sidewalk needs to be visualized. So here they were able to create, with the help of a consultant, the location of missing sidewalk or sidewalk that have been built for people to, to keep the public informed, basically. And then next, we have public participation outreach. The town of Maynard in Massachusetts, they created an ADA commission on their website where they can keep the public informed. The public can contact them to let them know where ramps are missing, what they need, if they need access to certain area and so forth. They established their transition plan in 2018. And I think they probably had help from other consultants and so forth. So that's how we are. So these are basically the 3 towns. We have Maynard, Somerville, and Concord, that are showing where they're at. So basically, those are questions. Do you want to share your experience with us? Who are your partners? What resources do you have to spread the word? You can share your experience with us more than likely, and who are your partners? What resources do you have to spread the word? The towns in Massachusetts, they've been using their website a lot. Our partners for us in Massachusetts are independent living centers. We have the public. We make sure that in our DOT, we have our ADA coordinators always taking the pulse of what's needed. Now, bringing transition plan to municipalities, you want to share best practices, engagement, and executing. Okay. So my name again is Lewis Loto. I'm the Assistant State Highway Design Engineer, and Zach is our Massachusetts Highway State ADA Coordinator. And we're doing some great work so far. So it was a pleasure to present to you. Okay.
Thank you, Zach and Lyris. That was great. We do have a couple questions for you before we get to all general questions.
Okay.
Zach, specifically for you, we have, does Zach have descriptions that go with the weighting factors?
So that's interesting. Yeah, so those weighting factors are actually broken into multiple categories. There is a larger document that has, within the category of, we can, well, I'm not sharing the screen anymore, but if we go back to it and look at, so safety talks about within that is crash clusters, is, types of crashes that are there, and there's like distance factors. So there are things that all break into that. Do I have it right here? No, but I can definitely pull up the larger spreadsheet that breaks those categories into more and share that if anyone would like to contact me outside of here.
Thank you, Zach. One thing I want to make a note of, I know some of you asked for the presenter's PowerPoint slides. If you email them directly, they'll be happy to send them to you. Another question for you, Zach and Lyris. What benefits resulted from local public agencies having plans?
Well, so one of the biggest things with having a plan, right, is obviously we're doing these plans because it is creating an accessible system, and that is, the paramount to what we're trying to do. But remember, like this is mandated. This is law, right? So if we're not doing this, and we're told and called out, and by called out I mean lawsuit, right? We can be held responsible, and our feet can be pressed to the flames. Other agencies within Massachusetts have had lawsuits filed against them, and they've had to react to that. And then at that point, their transition plan, gets created, but it is not a good look to say that we're doing this for the wrong reasons. We're doing it because we're getting sued. No, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. We want to make sure that our communities are are taken care of, and so there are definitely repercussions to not having this transition plan.
Yes, there are case studies too where cities have been sued. I don't have the exact same numbers right now, but I want to say in California, there's been quite a few cities that have been sued because they don't have transition plan and they don't have to be implemented. So it's really it's a priority that you would want to have a transition plan in all your cities and towns. And it's not that you have to create a transition plan and resolve all the issues, but you have to show, good faith effort into what it is that you want to present. That's what we're told.
Thank you both, Zach and Lyris. That was great. Now we're going to open up to questions for all the panelists. The first question is, have you found effective ways of working across departments at DOTs, such as working with transit planning colleagues?
So I can answer that. Actually, we just created a Mass DOT Transit Coordinator position. And we're doing the best that we can to coordinate with our local transit agencies when we're developing our projects. If we have a new corridor reconstruction in our cities and towns, or if we have, intersection improvement, whatever projects that we have, resurfacing projects and so forth, we're really looking at transit accessibility, and transit availability within our corridor and improving and providing access to that. So that's something that we're doing actively.
On mute, I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you, Lyris. Another question for all the panelists. What software do you recommend for mapping curve ramps?
Do you want to answer that, Zach? Or?
Yeah, so I mean, our software that for our Geodot website is just an ArcGIS base, right? It's a simple system that can take, all of that data and translate it into a map. So our ArcGIS really has been a big a big help in this process. That's my dog. I apologize.
No worries. All right, thank you, Zach. We got a lot of questions coming in, so we'll try to get as much as we can. Another question, do you find many municipalities use consultants for self-evaluation and transition plan processes?
Yes, I want to say that some have. For instance, we have a program called the Complete Streets Program, which basically we want the municipalities to come and take a course about what complete street is, and then develop a complete street policy. And they've used consultant to help them develop a complete street policy for their cities and towns, which will be, providing, making sure that roads are accessible to all users. And those fundings, when the cities are too small, basically, or the towns are too small, they have been able to use grants, to use consultants to develop their policies. And then it's the same time, I think, with the MOD grant and so forth, there has been grants available to cities and towns to use consultants to help them develop the ADA transition plan. So that has happened as well.
Margaret, were you going to say something about that as well?
Yeah, in Tennessee, we had a large percentage of our municipalities with 50 or more employees to use consultants. Some were wonderful, some weren't so wonderful, but they all, a large amount, used consultants to help them.
Great, thank you. Are there any funding sources to make ADA improvements?
For us in Massachusetts, we not only, so what we're doing, we're using all the funding sources, all of our projects, when they're going through a project development, they have to be accessible. So this is really an integral part of whether it's a HSIP, or whether it's a safe route to school or even a bridge replacement project. We have to make sure that the area is accessible so that the ramps are there. But in terms of us for the ADA transition plan, we set aside some state funding, which is about $10 million per year, roughly 2 or 3 projects per districts that are being used for just ADA retrofits project within our own state right of way. But every single, funding that we have, whatever the project is, we have to make sure that pedestrian and bicycle accessibility are taken into consideration and are integrated into the project.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, and in Tennessee, every project is reviewed for ADA compliance. And so it's not a separate funding to do ADA, it's every project we make sure it's compliant.
Yes, likewise in Massachusetts. Yep.
Great. Could you elaborate on STBG and TAP fund availability for developing?
Ooh.
I think you mentioned it earlier.
I know that I mentioned it, but I am the worst person to talk to about funding. I was told long ago that ADA was my problem, funding belonged to the chief engineer, and I've stuck with that. But I do know that grant funding, the funds that go out to the MPOs, they reach to me to say, hey, someone's asking for a grant of this amount. Does that sound like you could could you write a transition plan for that amount? Or is that too much? And I would go, well, usually that's a deal. So I'm really not, I would be afraid to say anything that I would get it wrong, but I do know it's used, and it was used in Tennessee.
Great. What has given you the biggest bang for your buck in supporting transition plan implementation by LPAs?
Training.
Yeah, absolutely. you know, the FaceTime, building that relationship and getting the training in. It has so many different factors built into establishing that system, hands down.
And that's training not only for external partners, but for internal partners as well, just to change the mentality and making sure that it's embraced agency-wide, et cetera, and statewide. So training, yes, is necessary continuously.
Thank you. We're almost at the end. We'll ask one more question. If you update the transition plan every 2 years, should you keep older versions online to show progress?
That is my understanding of a transition plan. You're not updating, you don't pull out, say, your standard drawings that were not that good. You put a red X through them, and then you show your new standard drawings as part of your plan. You identify a curb that's missing, and you include the date that when it was installed properly, so that you are showing the public, because the public hasn't entitled to see this. So you want to show the public that yes, it was a problem, and yes, we addressed it.
Yeah, we attached an addendum basically to our original transition plan to talk about all of the updates, all of the progress, and all of the, you know, adjustments that we would be making. And so that everything that was changed came after the initial transition plan.
Great. Well, we have 1 minute left. This has been a great discussion. Thank you all for participating. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted in the future. Special thanks to our speakers, Margaret Mahler, Lyris Latow, Zachary Wiener, and to our partners at AASHTO, Irene Rico, and the civil rights community. Please make sure to register for our next upcoming webinar on June 30th. The topic will be role of NPOs in ADA transition plan implementation. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Wonderful.